Close your eyes and drift back to the misty streets of 19th century New York. The air is heavy with smoke and secrets, cobblestones glisten under the dim glow of gas lamps. In these shadowed alleys gangs once ruled with silent power. Whispers of danger echo through the night, footsteps fade into darkness, and history breathes quietly beneath the city's heartbeat. Tonight, we'll wander those forgotten streets together, uncovering the world of the gangs of New York, a tale of survival, greed, and the restless spirit of an untamed city. This is Evolution History Hub, so take a deep breath, let your thoughts slow down, and allow history to lull you into the past. Don't forget to like and subscribe as we begin our quiet journey into the slums of old New York. Settle in. The night outside the window hums with a kind of restless quiet, the sound of the city's lungs breathing smoke and heat. You can smell the summer, thick with rotten rain, seeping through the broken panes. The slum never truly sleeps, it only softens its voice after midnight. Somewhere below, a cartwheel squeals, a cat hisses, and a drunk curses the cobblestones. You lie on a straw pallet that smells of mildew, your shirt clinging to your chest, and you let the sounds roll over you like the tide of the 5 Points itself. Always moving, never still. You share the room with 7 others tonight, a mother with a baby who whimpers through the heat, a bootblack who snores against the wall, a pair of dockmen who smell of tar and salt. Your sister, Nora, curls near the window, her hair like a spill of soot against the faint moonlight. There's no space to move without touching another body. The air is so close it feels like breathing through a damp rag, but this is home, or what passes for it, in the tenements of Cross Street, where a single room rents for $2 a month and a life costs far less. Outside, the lamplight flickers across the damp brick of the old brewery. Even years after its demolition, the people still whisper of it. A warren of sin and fever, where once 1,000 souls crammed into one building and a man might vanish without a sound. The stench of that history lingers. You can taste it on the back of your tongue, smoke, sewage, and sweat. The 5 Points, they call it, the crossroads where Mulberry, Anthony, Cross Orange, and Little Water meet. Some say it's the belly of the city where all the dirt and hunger settle. Others, like you, and know it's more like a heart, diseased maybe, but still beating. You turn on your side, listening for the river. If you concentrate, you can hear the creak of rigging down by the docks 2 streets away. That's where your father works when he bothers to go. He earns $1.25 a day unloading ships. Heavy work for heavy drink. Most nights, his pay is gone before the ink dries on the tavern counter. When he stumbles home, he doesn't talk much. You've learned to watch his eyes more than his hands. Sometimes he brings bread. Sometimes just the smell of whiskey and the guilt of living. Nora murmurs in her sleep, a half-formed word that sounds like my. You close your eyes. Your mother's face has been fading from memory for years now. You remember more of her hands than her voice. The way she tied your scarf tight in winter. The way she washed your hair in cold water when cholera crept through the alleys. 10 years old you were, standing in the doorway when they carried her out. After that, the world became harder, sharper, smaller. The city took her, and you learned it would keep taking until you took something back. The floorboards creak. Someone below starts a coughing fit, deep and wet, the kind that ends with spitting blood into a rag. You roll onto your back again and stare at the ceiling. The boards are dark with smoke and candle soot, the smell of kerosene and old sweat mixed together. You know every crack by heart. You could trace them like constellations if there were any stars left in this part of the city. From somewhere outside comes the faint thump of boots, steady, organized, not the stagger of drunks. Police, maybe. The Metropolitans, in their brass buttons and nightsticks, prowling the alleys looking for trouble to bribe or beat. They don't come here to protect anyone. They come to collect. Some of them are worse than the gangs they're supposed to stop. You've seen them drag men by the hair into the gutter just to prove a point. But tonight they pass by, their footsteps fading toward Mulberry, leaving you with the drip of water from the ceiling and the buzz of a single oil lamp. Your body is tired, but your mind won't rest. There's a strange stillness in the air, like the city is holding its breath. You can feel it in the walls, in the narrow stairways that sweat with heat, in the eyes of men at the corner bar who whisper about lost wages and empty docks. The talk is all the same: money gone missing, ships delayed, banks closing. Some call it panic, the panic of 57, though the word hasn't settled yet. To you it feels like the slow tightening of a noose. When the work dries up, hunger grows teeth, and men start biting one another for scraps. You close your eyes again, and the images come easily. The alleys at dawn, filled with ash and steam. barefoot children chasing rats with sticks, the smell of bread from the bakery that you can never afford, a gang of Bowery boys, clean-shaven and smug, strutting in their stovepipe hats like kings of the gutter. You remember the last fight, the way a cobblestone felt in your hand, the flash of brass knuckles under the gaslight, the taste of blood and dust. You still have the scar above your eyebrow from that night. It throbs sometimes, a reminder that even victory here hurts. Still, there are small comforts: Nora's breathing, the warmth of too many bodies in too small a room, the faint sound of a fiddle drifting through the alley, playing a tune that might have been Irish once, before it was drowned in city noise. You hum along quietly, the melody threading through your chest like a ghost of another life. You think of John Morrissey, a name the boys whisper with awe. They say he was one of the dead rabbits once, a street fighter who rose up to become a prize-fighter and even a politician. Proof, maybe, that a man can climb out of this mud if he's got fists hard enough and a will to match. You wonder if that's true, or just another story men tell themselves to keep from despair. A cockroach skitters across your blanket. You flick it away, then sit up, wiping the sweat from your neck. You can't sleep. Not yet. You stand quietly, careful not to wake Nora, and move toward the window. The glass is cracked and fogged, but through it you can see the faint glow of gaslight on wet cobblestones. The city looks peaceful from here if you squint, just shadows and shimmer. But you know what hides beneath it: knives, hunger, whispers. You've lived too long in this place to believe in the peace of silence. The street below slopes toward Paradise Square, a name that makes the locals laugh. It's nothing like paradise. The mud is deep enough to swallow a boot, and the stench from the sewer grates can make you gag. But it's where you grew up, where you learned to run, to fight, to lie. It's where the dead rabbits gather on warm nights, clustered around fires made from broken crates, eyes sharp for rivals. They're your brothers, in a way. Not by blood, but by survival. Every one of them has lost something: a mother, a home, a future. Together, you've built a kind of family out of the ruins. Your fingers brush the edge of your jacket. In the pocket is the small slingshot you made, a leather cord with a lead weight tied at the end. It's not much, but it's saved your skin more than once. You turn it over in your hand, feeling the texture of the leather smooth from use. You hate it and trust it in equal measure. In this city, tools and weapons are often the same thing. A shout breaks the stillness. Somewhere down the street, a bottle shatters, followed by laughter, rough and mean. Probably a Bowery patrol marking their turf. You pull the curtain closed and return to your spot beside Nora. She stirs but doesn't wake. Her hair smells faintly of soap, the cheap kind you both share from the public washroom on Baxter Street. You think of how young she still is, and how this place can chew innocence like gristle. You promised her once you'd get her out to somewhere with air that doesn't stink of waste and streets that don't run red after a fight. You meant it then. You still mean it now. But meaning and doing are different things when every coin is spent before you earn it. The city groans again. A cart rolling, a horse whinnying, a baby crying through the thin walls. You lie back and let your thoughts drift. Sometimes you imagine the docks at dawn, the masts like black trees against a pink sky, the gulls crying, the wind smelling of salt instead of rot. You picture yourself on a ship heading west, maybe to San Francisco, maybe to nowhere in particular. Just away from the 5 Points and all its ghosts. A few drops of rain hit the window. The first storm of the season is brewing, thick clouds gathering over the East River, lightning flashing faintly behind them. The air turns heavy, and you can feel the tension rising in the streets below, as if even the city's nerves are drawn tight. You remember what the priest said last Sunday at the mission hall. The Lord watches over even the least of his children. You're not sure you believe that. If he does watch, he's got a cruel sense of humor. Still, sometimes, when the nights are too long and the hunger too deep, you whisper a prayer under your breath. Not for salvation, just for a chance. You hear a door slam downstairs, then the scuff of boots on the stairs. The noise stirs the others. The dockmen grumble. The mother hushes her child. A shadow fills the doorway, your father swaying slightly, his eyes glassy. He mumbles something about losing work, about ships stuck in harbor, about men being let go. You catch only fragments, but the meaning is clear. The docks are closing down. The panic is spreading faster than cholera ever did. He drops a loaf of bread on the table, stale, half-eaten, and collapses onto a cot. His snores fill the room within moments. You glance at Nora. She's awake now, watching you with those wide, careful eyes. You nod once, silently. She understands. You'll make do. You always do. The rain begins to fall harder, drumming on the roof in a steady rhythm. You listen to it, letting the sound soothe the corners of your thoughts. Outside, the fires in the street gutters hiss and die. Tomorrow will come, with its noise, its hunger, its dangers. But for now, there's only this: the rhythm of the rain, the warmth of your sister beside you, the pulse of the city through the thin wooden floor. You close your eyes and breathe. The air is foul, but it's still air. The night presses close, heavy and human, full of small movements, whispers, sighs, the distant clatter of hooves. Somewhere beyond it all, you can almost hear the river again, steady and patient, flowing past the docks toward the sea. And for a moment, just a moment, you let yourself imagine what it might feel like to follow it. Morning comes slow in the 5 Points. Light doesn't so much arrive as it seeps, thin and grey through the cracks in the shutters, through the smoke that hangs like fog between the buildings. You wake to the sound of coughing, the rhythm of the city already at work, footsteps on the stairs, the scrape of a pan, the cry of a vendor hawking yesterday's bread. The rain from last night has turned the streets into rivers of mud, slick and black. Carrying scraps of paper and the smell of horse dung, you stretch your back, bones aching from the floor, and look over at Nora. She's already awake, mending a tear in her dress by the window. The morning light makes her look older than 14. Her fingers move carefully, her lips pressed together in that quiet focus she learned from your mother. There's pride in the way she works. Small, patient, necessary. Your father's gone. His cot is empty, the loaf of bread half missing. Maybe he went back to the docks, hoping for work. Maybe to the tavern, hoping for forgetfulness. You decide not to wonder which. The air outside is thick with heat and coal smoke. You splash a bit of water from a tin basin onto your face. It's lukewarm and tastes of rust, but it wakes you. The mirror on the wall, a shard of glass held in place by a nail, shows a young man who looks older than 19. Freckles, a thin scar over the brow, jaw half covered in stubble. Your eyes, though, they're steady, always steady. The kind that learned long ago not to blink when a knife flashes. You step out into the stairwell. The wood creaks beneath your feet. The smell of boiled cabbage rises from the lower floors, mingled with kerosene and wet laundry. Children run past you on the steps, barefoot, laughing, holding sticks that serve as swords. Their laughter bounces off the walls like a song from another world. Outside, the day opens wide, hot, noisy, alive. The intersection at the 5 Points is already crowded: carts, beggars, shoeshine boys, washerwomen. The mud sucks at your boots. A preacher stands on an upturned barrel, shouting verses to no one in particular, while behind him a man steals from his unattended basket. Business as usual. You head toward Paradise Square, where the dead rabbits gather. The gang doesn't have a clubhouse, just a stretch of street and an understanding. The city papers call you criminals. Maybe they're right. But in a place where lawmen take bribes from Bowery boys and landlords double rent without fixing the roofs, crime is often the only kind of justice a man can afford. You find Mick Donnelly leaning against a lamppost, whittling a piece of wood with his pocket knife. He grins when he sees you, teeth chipped, 1 gold. "Morning, Tommy," he says. You hear the news. Depends which kind. He flicks the knife closed. Bank on Wall Street's gone under. Men lining up since dawn trying to get their wages, but the clerks are saying there's no money left to give. You blink. No money. He shrugs. None that they're handing out anyway. Word is, half the ships in the harbour will be stuck there for weeks. No cargo, no pay. You think of your father, of the empty cot. The panic's claws are reaching this far already. A few dockhands nearby are muttering about the same thing: lost work, closed warehouses, bosses who disappeared overnight. It's not just rumours now, it's hunger with a timetable. Mick lowers his voice. Word from Mulberry says the Bowery boys are taking advantage, shaking down shopkeepers, claiming they're collecting for protection. Their territory's spreading. We can't let them get a hold on Baxter, or we'll be penned in like rats. You sigh. We've barely got enough boys to keep our own corners safe. He grins, sharp and reckless. That's why we're talking tonight. Morrissey's men are coming down. They say he's got a plan to bring all the Irish gangs under one banner. Imagine that. No more scraps, just one big strike. You've heard Morrissey's name whispered before. Prize fighter turned power broker. 1 foot in the gutter, the other in politics. A man like that doesn't risk his neck unless there's something worth fighting for. Still, you glance toward home, where Nora's probably fetching water from the pump. I don't know, Mick. Maybe we've fought enough. He chuckles. You sound like a priest. You think the Bowery boys are going to stop just because you stay quiet. They'd as soon cut your throat as look at you. You know he's right. Still, the thought of another fight. of blood on the cobblestones and the smell of gunpowder under the gaslight makes your stomach turn. A shout draws your attention. Down the street, a group of Bowery boys in stovepipe hats are marching past, loud and swaggering. Their coats are clean, their faces smug. One of them spots the Irish tricolour chalked on the wall behind you and spits on it. "Go back to your holes, paddy rats," he yells. The dead rabbits bristle, fists tightening. Mick steps forward, knife already out. You grab his arm. "Not now," you murmur. He looks at you, half angry, half relieved. The Bowery boys laugh and keep walking, boots splashing through the mud. You watch them disappear into the crowd. A boy runs up then, thin, freckled, barefoot. Jimmy from Mulberry, a newsie who always seems to know things before anyone else. He's clutching a folded newspaper. "They're printing extras," he gasps. "Says the banks are shutting all over the country. People losing everything. Some jumped from the windows on Wall Street." He waves the paper in your face. The headline bleeds through the cheap ink. "Orphinancial panic, Scransilos mar halted." You scan the text. "Ships delayed, wages unpaid, bread prices doubled overnight." You hand it back slowly. The spark is catching, not just anger, but desperation, the kind that turns men into mobs. Mick leans in. "You see, there's no waiting this one out. You either take what's yours or starve." You think of Nora, her thin wrists, the quiet way she hides her hunger so you can eat. You think of your father, drowning himself in whiskey. And you think of yourself, 19, caught between the gutter and a dream. The city hums louder now. You can feel it in the ground, the vibration of carts, the murmur of crowds, the tension rising like heat before a storm. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell tolls noon. You and Mick head toward Baxter Street, where an old tavern serves as a kind of meeting place. Inside, it's dim and smoky, the air thick with sweat and cheap gin. Men are gathered around tables, their voices low but urgent. You recognize a few faces, laborers, gang men, even a couple of ward heelers with the slick look of politicians' messengers. Everyone's talking about the same thing: lost work, empty pockets, the Bowery boys pushing further south. You sit at the bar, nursing a mug of ale that costs 5 cents. Too much, but it buys you a moment to think. A man beside you, grey, bearded and broad-shouldered, turns and says, "They say Morrissey's coming down from the docks tomorrow. Wants every rabbit ready. Big show of strength." You nod, though your stomach knots. You've seen what shows of strength become. Stones, fire, blood. The door slams open. 2 Metropolitan officers enter, their coats shining with brass buttons. The room goes still. One of them scans the crowd with that lazy cruelty you've come to know too well. "Afternoon, gentlemen," he drawls. "License check." The bartender mutters something, reaching for a coin under the counter. The officer smirks, pockets it, and leaves. Easy as breathing. The law in 5 points costs 25 cents and a bit of pride. When they're gone, the tension breaks like a wave. Voices rise again, sharper now. A young man at the far table slams his fist down. "They rob us. The Bowery beats us, and the city forgets we exist. Maybe it's time we make remember." A murmur of agreement rolls through the room. You leave before the talk turns into plans. The heat and the noise are too much. Outside, the afternoon sun glares off the puddles, blinding. You walk fast, head down through streets that smell of fish and smoke. The markets are crowded. Women haggling for bread, men shouting about work that doesn't exist. You pass a group of children fighting over an apple core. At the corner, you stop to watch a man nail a notice to a post. The paper flaps in the wind. Employment office closed until further notice. You read it twice, your throat tightening. There it is, the quiet truth of the city, hammered in plain sight. By the time you return to the tenement, the sky has turned the color of iron. Nora is sitting on the steps, clutching a small bundle of laundry. She smiles when she sees you, but it doesn't reach her eyes. "Megis. O'Rourke says she can't pay me anymore," she says softly. Her husband lost his job at the foundry. You sit beside her. The smell of wet stone fills the air. "We'll find something else." She nods, though she doesn't ask how. You both know there's nothing else left to find. Inside, the room feels emptier than usual. Your father hasn't come back. The bread's gone. The lamp oil's nearly spent. You sit by the window, watching the rain start again, and the city beyond it. All those lives pressed together, all those fires burning low. Somewhere across Paradise Square, a fight breaks out. You hear the shouts, the crash of glass, the scrape of boots on cobblestone. Then the sharp crack of a pistol, a pause, silence. Then the echo of feet running. You stay still, heart thudding. Not from fear, from recognition. That sound means the line's been crossed again. The uneasy peace between gangs and cops and hunger has snapped. You look over at Nora. She's watching you, her face pale in the lamplight. "Tummy," she whispers. Promise me you won't go out tonight. You don't answer right away. The promise would be a lie, and you've lied too many times already. Instead, you reach for the edge of her blanket and pull it up over her shoulders. Sleep, you say quietly. It's just thunder. The outside, the city rumbles again. Not thunder, but something like it. The spark is caught, burning quietly through the maze of alleys and hearts. You can feel it in your blood, even as you close your eyes. The storm is coming. Morning comes grey and slow. The light has a kind of sorrow in it, the sort that seeps between the tenement cracks and settles on everything like dust. You wake to the sound of boots in the alley. A woman is shouting somewhere below, her voice hoarse from a night without sleep. The smell of smoke still clings to the air. The riot burned through part of Mulberry Street before dying with the dawn. Nora is already up, tying her hair with a frayed ribbon. She doesn't speak at first. She just looks at you, at the bruises blooming along your jaw, the cut on your temple, the crusted blood along your knuckles. You can't keep doing this, she whispers finally. Every time you come back, there's less of you. You want to tell her that she's wrong, that you fight so there can be more of you, more of her, more of something that lasts. But the words die before they reach your tongue. You look out the window instead. 5-point stretches before you like a wound. The intersection glistens with puddles and broken glass. A dead horse lies half, covered with rags. The police wagons have come and gone, hauling off the unlucky and the nameless. The rest just keep moving, because there's no such thing as pause here, not in a city that feeds on its own hunger. You hear talk in the streets, quiet but rising. They say the banks are failing. Ships in the harbour sit idle because no one can pay for the cargo. Men are being turned off from the docks by the hundreds. They call it a panic, though the word feels too small for what's coming. By noon the taverns are full again, but this time the laughter is nervous. Dockmen huddle over empty mugs, counting coins that no longer stretch far enough. A loaf of bread has gone up to 8 cents. A day's wage buys less each week. You pass through the crowd at Murphy's saloon and find Seamus sitting at the back, arm in a sling, a half-empty bottle in front of him. The fight yesterday took more out of him than he'll admit. Still, his grin cuts through the haze. "Tommy Callahan," he says, "or a little ghost from the alleys. You did well, boy. Saw you stand your ground, Aran," you say quietly. He shrugs. "A wise man knows when to live. We'll need you yet." Then he leans in close. There's talk of a job, down by the harbour. Some crates need unloading at night, no questions asked. There's money in it, real money. You know what that means, smuggled goods, or worse. But Seamus keeps talking, painting it like a chance, like a doorway cracked open to something better. "You do this right, Tommy, and you'll never shine another pair of boots again." You nod, though your stomach knots tight. Because even if the money's real, the cost always comes due. That night, you find Nora sitting on the roof, legs crossed, staring at the city lights. She's been collecting scraps of fabric from the rag shop where she sometimes works. The pieces are bright, blue, red, green, and she's sewing them together with careful stitches. "What's that?" you ask. "A quilt," she says. "For when we leave." You smile faintly. "Leave? Where to?" She shrugs. "Anywhere that isn't here. Maybe the docks, maybe a ship out west. I heard a girl at the shop say you can buy a train ticket all the way to Chicago for $12. $12. It might as well be $1,200. But you don't say that. You let her dream. For a while the two of you sit in silence, watching the lamps flicker below. The city hums like a beast at rest, breathing smoke, muttering in its sleep. The next evening, you go down to the docks. The job Seamus promised is waiting 3 men, a cart, and a line of crates marked with the seal of a shipping company you've never heard of. You're told not to ask questions, so you don't. You just lift, carry, and load, feeling the weight dig into your shoulders. Halfway through, a watchman appears at the end of the pier, lantern swinging. "Who's there?" he calls. Panic flashes through the group. Seamus hisses, "Move faster!" But you see the watchman's hand go to his whistle. You act without thinking, step forward, grab the nearest crate, and drop it hard. The wood splits open, spilling its contents bottles, dozens of them, glinting in the lantern light. Whiskey, untaxed, smuggled, illegal. The watchman's eyes widen. He blows the whistle. The night erupts in chaos. Seamus curses and bolts. The others scatter. You run for the edge of the pier, lungs burning, the sound of boots hammering behind you. A shot cracks through the air. 1, then 2. Splinters fly from the post beside your head. You dive into the water. It's cold and black and endless. The river grabs you by the throat, drags you under. You kick, claw, rise again, coughing salt and filth. Lights blur overhead. The city, alive and indifferent. You swim until the noise fades, until the world becomes only the rhythm of your heartbeat and the taste of iron in your mouth. When you finally crawl onto the far bank, you lie still for a long time, staring up at the stars. You realize you haven't seen them in weeks. Here, they don't belong to you. But out there, beyond the harbor, beyond the gaslight, they might. You don't go back to the dead rabbits that night. You don't go back at all. Instead, you slip into the tenement, wake Nora, and whisper, "Pack what you can." She blinks sleepily. Why? What happened? "We're leaving," you say, "before the city swallows us whole." There's fear in her eyes, but also something else. Hope, faint and trembling like a candle. She doesn't ask where you'll go. She just nods, gathers her scraps of fabric, and follows you into the street. Outside, the dawn mist curls through the alleys. The city hasn't yet stirred. For a moment, it feels like the world is holding its breath. You pass Paradise Square one last time. Smoke still stains the walls, and the cobblestones are dark with blood washed thin by rain. You think of your mother's voice again. "Keep your head low, Tommy. Keep your hands clean if you can." You touch the cut on your temple, the scar it will leave. Then you turn away. As you walk toward the docks, the first ships begin to stir, sails rising like ghosts in the pale light. Somewhere behind you, Sheamus will curse your name. The gangs will keep fighting, and the city will keep forgetting. But maybe, somewhere beyond the horizon, there's a place where the air doesn't taste of soot and the sky doesn't close in like a cage. You squeeze Nora's hand. "Hold on," you say softly. "We're not ghosts yet." And together, you step into the fog. The fog thickens along the East River. It rolls between the masts like slow smoke, swallowing the world in grey. The air smells of coal ash and salt. You and Nora stand near the docks. The boards slick beneath your boots, the faint creak of mooring ropes like an old man's sigh. She clutches her bundle of clothes and patchwork scraps, pressed tight to her chest. Her breath shivers in the cold. The sky hasn't yet found its color. It's that blue before dawn, the kind that makes you think time has stopped moving. Behind you, the city hums in its sleep. The muffled cries, the clatter of carriage wheels on cobblestone, the occasional shout from a watchman. Life never stops here, it just sinks deeper underground. But tonight, something is ending, and you can feel it. You walk along the piers reading the names of ships painted in flaking white: the Augusta, Marianne, Caledonia, Vigilant. You've never been on a ship before, not properly. Once, you stole aboard a barge just to sleep for a night, listening to the groan of the hull against the tide. You dreamed then that it would carry you away while you slept, out past the Battery, past Staten Island, past everything. Now the dream feels less like fantasy and more like a plan. A hard one maybe, but still a plan. A man with a lantern passes you, his coat collar high against the damp. He's one of the dockhands, older, eyes like wet stones. He looks you over, your torn jacket, your bruises, the girl beside you, and stops. "Early for the loading shift," he mutters. You hesitate, then answer. "We're looking for work." "Passage, maybe." He studies you for a long moment. Not much of either these days. Panics hit every trade. Men sleeping on the wharves, waiting for ships that don't pay. You nod. The words sit heavy. The panic of '57 had come down like winter, sudden, cold, unforgiving. Banks failed, mills closed, and the streets filled with hungry faces. You'd seen men fight over coal scraps, women begging for bread. There was no charity left to give. The man lowers his lantern slightly, seeing something in your eyes. "Still," he says, "there's a schooner bound for Albany tomorrow. They'll take deckhands cheap, half wages, maybe less." "How much?" you ask. 50 cents a day if you can haul rope and scrub decks. Meals included, if you don't mind hard bread. 50 cents. It's not much, but it's movement. You thank him. He nods once, then disappears into the fog. You and Nora sit at the edge of the pier as dawn begins to bleed into the sky. A faint glow turns the water silver. Somewhere out in the harbor, a bell tolls, a long, lonely sound that seems to echo across the years. Nora leans against you. Do you think it'll be better there? You want to tell her yes. But you've learned the danger of promises in a world that keeps none. So instead you say, "It'll be different." And sometimes that's enough. She nods slowly. The wind tugs at her hair. You think of your father then, his broad hands, his hollow eyes, the way he used to hum an old Irish tune when he was sober enough to remember the words. You'd hated him for staying, for sinking deeper each year into the bottle and the dirt. But now you understand a little. The city is a trap made of need. It holds you fast until you can no longer remember who you were before it. You won't let that happen to her, or to yourself. By midday, the fog burns away. The city reappears, sharp, edged and unkind. Men shout from wagons, selling fruit gone soft in the heat. A group of children chase a stray dog across Anthony Street, laughing barefoot over glass. The smell of fish guts mingles with horse manure and the faint sweetness of roasting chestnuts. It's all ordinary and unbearable. You spend what coins you have left on 2 bread rolls and a small paper bundle of salted meat. 6 cents in all. Enough for a meal and a little hope. Nora eats in silence, perched on a barrel near the dock office. When she's done, she unfolds her quilt, just a small thing, barely the size of a pillow. The pieces of color catch the light, reds and greens stitched unevenly. It looks like the kind of thing a child might make to keep the world from coming apart. Keep it, she says, placing it in your hands, so you don't forget. Her voice cracks just a little at the end. You swallow hard. I won't, you say, but you should take it, for the trip. She shakes her head. You'll need something warm before we find work. You fold the quilt carefully, feeling the rough threads under your fingertips. Every patch is a story. An old shirt, a neighbor's curtain, a scrap from your mother's dress. You imagine her sewing in the dim light, fingers pricked, needle flashing like a heartbeat. You tuck it into your coat, then we'll keep each other warm. That night, you return to your tenement one last time. The room feels smaller now, the air stale with years of sweat and smoke. You look at the walls and wonder how many lives have passed through here. How many children dreamed of leaving and never did. You gather what's left. A pair of boots from a neighbor who died last winter, a small knife, a worn rosary, a photograph of your mother's, faded and spotted, but still hers. Outside, the street is quiet. You can hear the faint notes of a fiddle drifting from an open window, playing a tune that sounds half Irish, half New York, something in between, like you. You pause at the doorway and take one last look at the place that made you. The bricks, the stink, the noise. It all shaped you in ways you'll never escape. But maybe that's all right. Maybe surviving is its own kind of belonging. Nora touches your sleeve. Ready? You nod. You leave 5 points without ceremony. No one notices, and that feels right. The gangs will still fight. The alleys will still echo. The city will still breathe its rough, hungry rhythm. But your footsteps carry you farther with each block, until the noise begins to fade behind you. At the river, you stop. The schooner is moored at the end of the pier, sails slack against the mast. A few men move about, coiling ropes, voices low. You look at Nora. Once we step aboard, there's no turning back. She looks up at the ship, then at you. Then let's not look back. Her hand finds yours, small, steady, warm. Together, you climb the gangplank, your heart beating not with fear, but with something quieter, resolve, fragile but real. The deck creaks beneath your feet. The smell of tar and salt fills your lungs. Above, gulls wheel through the soft grey sky, crying their endless song. You turn toward the horizon. The wind lifts the edges of your coat, carrying with it the last traces of Mulberry Street, of smoke and cobblestones and blood washed clean by rain. For the first time in a long while, you breathe deep. The river answers in kind, whispering against the hull like a promise. You touch the quilt in your pocket and think, maybe this is what hope feels like. Not loud, not bright, but steady. A heartbeat that refuses to die. You close your eyes. The ship rocks gently, the tide pulling outward. And in that quiet motion, you make your choice. The schooner Albany Rose creaks against her moorings, her tarred ropes sighing in the wind. You stand at the end of the pier, your breath visible in the early light, the smell of salt and damp wood thick around you. The decision is made. Now comes the part you never imagined, the work of leaving. The dock foreman, a red-faced man with a pipe clamped in his teeth, points you toward the quartermaster. 50 cents a day, he says. You get 1 bunk, hard bread, and river water. You break anything, you pay it back double. You nod. It sounds fair enough. After years of alleyways, even the chance to sleep above the tide feels like luxury. You and Nora spend what little you have left gathering supplies from the stalls along Water Street. A sack of flour, $3, but the merchant agrees to sell you a smaller portion for 75 cents. A tin cup for 5. A wool blanket patched and thin for $1. You count each coin twice before handing it over. The woman at the stall watches you with tired eyes. Heading north, are ye? You hesitate, then nod. Good place to start over, if you can stand the cold, she says. The river'll test you, it always does. Back on the pier, a sailor sits sharpening a knife on the step of a warehouse. His beard is white, his coat frayed but clean. You ask if he's bound for Albany too. He looks up, squints. Name's Cormac Shee, been running this river 30 years. He sees your hands, cut from work, bruised from fights, and something softens in his face. First voyage. You nod again. He spits, then smiles faintly. Keep your rope coiled neat. Never stand in a loop, never turn your back on the wind. And don't drink all your water before noon. The Hudson's colder than sin, and she don't forgive fools. You listen, committing every word to memory. There's a rhythm to his advice, like scripture written in salt and steam. He shows you how to tie a bowline, the sailor's friend, he calls it, and how to check for rot in the hemp lines. His hands move slow and sure, the way your mother used to braid your sister's hair. You from the points, he asks at last. You stiffen. Aye. He nods, unsurprised. Half the crew is, these days, city squeezes you till you've got nowhere left but the river. You want to ask him if the river really leads somewhere better, but his eyes already hold the answer, maybe not better, just different. Sometimes that's enough. That night, you and Nora sleep near the wharf fire with the other deckhands. The flames crackle low, their light painting everyone in shades of copper and smoke. You can smell the river on their clothes, the same sour tang of tar and sweat that marks the ones who live by it. A man strums a broken fiddle, the tune half a lullaby, half a warning. Someone passes a jug, someone else laughs. For the first time in months, no one's looking to fight. Nora rests her head on your shoulder. Do you think Ma would have liked the water? You smile faint. She used to say it reminded her of Ireland. Then maybe she's watching us now. You don't answer. You just listen, to the fiddle, to the waves slapping the pier, to the whisper of sails stirring in the dark. At dawn, you rise early and walk the length of the pier alone. The city behind you is already waking the bell from Trinity Church, the rumble of carts on cobblestone, the cry of the bread sellers. But the sound feels far away, softened by mist. You watch the light touch the rooftops and think of the alleys you'll never walk again. Cormac joins you, pipe smoke curling from his lips. Don't look back too much, lad, he says quietly. Cities like that, they keep your shadow even when you leave. You nod. We just want a chance to start over. He studies you. Then take it. The hardest part of any voyage is the first rope you cut. He taps his pipe against the railing, then walks off toward the ship. You stay a moment longer, feeling the wind off the water wrap around you. Cold, clean, alive. You reach into your coat and touch the quilt Nora made. The stitches are rough beneath your fingers, threads of color in a grey world. You think of all it carries: smoke, sweat, hope. A small piece of home, small enough to fit in your palm. When the crew bell rings, you lift your bundle, take Nora's hand and step aboard. The boards creak, gulls cry, and the air fills with the smell of wet rope and coal oil. The Albany Rose strains against the tide, waiting for her moment. You breathe once, deeply, as if memorizing the city's scent. The wood smoke, the brine, the faint sweetness of dawn bread baking somewhere far inland. Then you let it go. The ropes are cast off. The sails billow. And as the ship turns slowly toward the north, you feel the pull of the river beneath your feet. Not the shove of desperation, but the steady tug of something new beginning. The Albany Rose creaks and sways as the tide pulls her outward, her hull cutting through the grey, green water like a slow exhale. You and Nora stand by the railing, hands gripping the damp wood, watching the city shrink behind you, brick by brick, smokestack by smokestack, memory by memory. The 5 Points is just a blur now, hidden behind warehouses and the distant haze of coal smoke. But you can still feel it, the pulse of it beneath your ribs. The echoes of boots in alleyways. The scrape of a tin cup against stone. The shouts of boys playing stickball with broken crates. That was your world, and even if you leave it, it will never quite leave you. Tummy. Nora says softly, tugging your sleeve. Is it all right to be happy about leaving? You turn to her. Her hair is wind, tangled, her cheeks flushed from the morning chill. She looks younger out here, freer, almost. Aye. You say after a long moment. It's all right. Doesn't mean we've forgotten, just means we've lived through it. She smiles a little and nods, then reaches into her coat. I kept this for you. She opens her hand. It's your mother's rosary. Worn wood beads, half the crucifix missing, the string tied back together with a knot you made years ago. I thought you sold it. You whisper. I was going to, she admits, but I couldn't. You take it from her, feeling the smooth beads warm in your palm. A piece of the past, fragile as glass. Keep it, you tell her, closing her fingers over it. You'll need it more than me. She shakes her head. No, you're the one who always gets in trouble. You laugh softly. Then we'll call it even. As the ship pushes away from the pier, the Cormac shouts orders from the deck. The crew moves like a tide, pulling ropes, tightening sails, shouting to one another in a language made of rhythm and salt. The harbour wind fills the canvas and suddenly, everything begins to move. The city starts to fade into the morning mist. The towers of Trinity Church vanish first, then the warehouse roofs, and finally, even the sound of the streets. The cries, the carts, the chaos dissolves into a hush broken only by the slap of waves. You stand beside Nora, both silent. You don't wave, there's no one left to wave to. As the schooner passes Governor's Island, you see another ship heading south, a rusted packet bound for New Orleans, heavy with cargo and faces you recognize from the points. Boys your age, eyes like flint, some shouting insults across the water. Others too tired to care. One of them cups his hands and calls out,
"Callahan."
"You think you're betting us now?" You freeze, the voice sharp as a thrown stone. You can't see his face through the fog, but you know it's from the Bowery boys. For a second, the old instinct rises, to shout back, to fight, to prove something. But you just stare across the gap, your hand tightening around the rosary in your pocket. Then you turn away. The river swallows their laughter. Hours later, the Albany Rose glides past the northern edge of Manhattan. The land turns greener, quieter. Trees lean toward the river, and gulls circle above the wake. The air smells different, less of soot, more of pine and rain. Cormac joins you again, leaning against the rail. "First time you've been this far up the river?" he asks. You nod. "Good. Then remember this. Once the city's behind you, don't drag it after you. You want a new life, you've got to let the old one sink." He looks toward Nora, then back at you. "She's got your mother's eyes." You smile faintly. "She's got her stubbornness too." He chuckles. "That'll keep her alive." That evening, the sun drops low, spilling copper light across the Hudson. The water turns to fire beneath the sails. The crew eats their supper in quiet circles, passing bread and salted meat. Nora hums softly beside you, a tune your mother used to sing when the nights were too long. You look out at the horizon. Somewhere beyond it lies Albany. Beyond that, maybe a farm, maybe the frontier, maybe freedom. You don't know. But for the first time, not knowing doesn't frighten you. As the first stars appear, you take one last look back. Manhattan is only a smudge of darkness now, glowing faintly at its edges like the ember of a dying fire. You think of your father, still somewhere in the taverns near the docks. You think of your mother, gone, but somehow nearer now than ever. And you think of all the friends you lost in the alleys, the ones who never got to leave. You whisper their names into the wind, one by one. The river carries them away. You reach into your coat and pull out the last thing from the 5 points. A brass button from your old gang coat, polished smooth by years of wear. You look at it for a long time, feeling its weight. Then, with a steady hand, you toss it overboard. It sinks without a sound. Nora watches, understanding without asking. "Goodbye," she says. You nod. "Goodbye." The ship sails on, and as the wind fills the sails once more, you realize something you've never felt before. The silence isn't empty, it's peaceful. For the first time in your life, you let yourself breathe, and you don't taste smoke. 2 days upriver, the Albany Rose drifts through morning fog, so thick it feels like sailing through milk. The world is muted. No sound but the slow creak of timber and the whisper of the current against the hull. When the mist finally lifts, you see it, the river narrowing, green hills folding in close on either side, and a scattering of roofs ahead. Cormac points with his pipe. "Kingston Landing," he says. "Endo, the line for most river hands. You can catch a wagon west from here if you've the coin, or stay if you've the heart for quiet work." You and Nora watch the shoreline come into focus. It's nothing like the 5 points. No black smoke, no cobblestones slick with filth. Just rows of timber houses, a sawmill, a small church, and the steady rhythm of men unloading cargo in clean air. For a moment, neither of you speaks. You're afraid to. The quiet feels too fragile. The ship docks with a hollow thunk of rope against wood. The crew begins to scatter, some heading for taverns, others for the hiring posts near the mill. You thank Cormac for the lessons, for the knots, for the words he never quite said but you understood anyway. He hands you a small folded scrap of paper. "Address of a man named O'Dole," he says. "Runs a stable outside town, hires Irish hands now and then. Tell him Cormac sent you." You nod, trying to keep your voice steady. "Thank you." He gives you a grin full of tobacco stains. "Don't thank me yet." He pays in sweat, not silver. Then he turns away, pipe smoke trailing behind him like fog. You and Nora step onto the dock. The boards feel strange beneath your feet, solid, dry, honest. A woman at a nearby stall eyes your clothes, the city dirt still in the seams. "Come up from the harbour?" she asks, her voice wary but not unkind. You say, "looking for work." She studies you, then nods toward the stables on the far side of town. "Try O'Dell's." He don't ask many questions, so long as you can lift a bale. You exchange a glance with Nora. Even here, it seems, Cormac's name carries weight. As you walk through Kingston, people look, some curious, some cautious. The Irish are still outsiders, even this far from the docks. But there's no spitting, no slurs hurled from stoops. Just the kind of silence that tests you before it welcomes you. The air smells of cut pine and river clay. The streets are dirt, not cobblestone. A boy runs past with a hoop, laughing. A dog barks somewhere near the blacksmith's. It feels almost ordinary. And that, somehow, is the strangest thing of all. Odell's stable sits at the edge of a field, its fence leaning like tired bones. The man himself is thick-armed, with eyes pale as winter water. He listens as you explain. The way you hold yourself, straight but not proud. When you mention Cormac's name, his eyebrows lift. He's still alive then. You nod. Very much. Good man. Hard drinker. He spits, then gestures toward the paddock. I'll pay you 75 cents a day to muck stalls, feed, and haul. Girl can mend harnesses if she's any good with her hands. She is. You say before Nora can answer. He grunts. Then you start tomorrow. It's not much, but it's honest work, and for once no one's asking what you did before. That night, Odell lets you sleep in the loft above the stables. The straw is dry, the air warm from the animals below. You and Nora share bread and water by lantern light. She stares out the small window at the stars above the fields. It's so quiet here, she whispers. Do you think it'll stay that way? You shrug. Don't know, but maybe it doesn't have to stay. Maybe we just make it quiet wherever we are. She smiles at that, the same small, tired smile your mother used to wear when she wanted to believe in better days. You lie back on the straw, staring at the wooden beams above. For the first time, you don't hear shouting through the walls. No police whistles, no fights, just crickets and the soft breath of horses. You think of the 5 points, not with hatred, not with pride, but with a kind of strange affection. It made you what you are. It taught you how to survive. And survival, you realize, is a kind of hope in itself. You close your eyes, the smell of hay and river salt filling your lungs. Tomorrow there will be work, sweat, caluses, but tonight there is rest. Morning comes gentle. Light spills through the cracks in the boards, turning the dust to gold. Nora is still asleep, the quilt pulled around her shoulders. You reach over and tuck it close, careful not to wake her. For the first time in your life, you feel something unfamiliar. A stillness that isn't fear. The river hums softly in the distance, calling like it always has. But this time you don't hear escape in its voice. You hear belonging, and when you step outside into the morning, the world feels new. Not because it has changed, but because you have. The sun rises pale over the Hudson Valley, painting the mist in faint gold. You hitch your shoulders against the cool morning air, the smell of wet hay and horse sweat wrapping around you. Each breath feels heavier than the last, not from exhaustion, but from the strange quiet that has settled into your bones. You're no longer waking to the shriek of alley cats or the clang of tin pans on tenement walls. Here, the world moves slower, like an old man taking measured steps. You begin to work at Odell's stable the way you once fought to survive the 5 points. Cautious, silent, eyes always watching. The first few days are hard. The pitchfork blisters your palms. The hay scratches at your arms until you're red raw. But your back bends the way your father's did when he hauled crates at the docks, and your shoulders find their rhythm in the labor. By the third dawn, you can toss a bale without losing your balance. Odell watches from the paddock, his face unreadable, pipe clenched tight between his teeth. He nods once, not praise exactly, but permission to keep going. Nora takes to her sewing in the tack room, fingers nimble as sparrows. She patches reins and saddle straps, her small world of work quiet, except for the creak of leather. Sometimes you catch her humming, and for a second you remember your mother doing the same thing, back before the cholera, back when the smell of boiled potatoes and soap filled your one-room home. The days slide by like the slow drift of the Hudson Current. In the evenings, you sit on the fence and watch the sky turn to embers. Out beyond the fields, the land rolls soft and green, nothing like the cramped maze of the 5 points. The horizon feels endless, but there's a pull in your chest that keeps you looking back east, to the smoke, to the noise, to the ghosts. Word travels even this far from the city. There's talk at the tavern, the panic of 57 deepening, men thrown off the docks, wages halved, soup kitchens filling with desperate families. You listen in silence as a teamster reads from a crumpled newspaper, banks collapsing, ships idled at harbor. The ironworks closing near Mulberry Bend. You picture your father there, staggering home, pockets empty. Rage sharp in his throat. You don't know if he's still alive, and the thought settles like frost under your ribs. By late summer, the hills are alive with crickets and heat. The fields crackle underfoot. The horses grow restless, swatting flies with their tails. You learn to work under the sun without losing your temper or your footing. Sweat burns in your eyes, salt in the corners of your lips. The labor is brutal, but clean. Every ache in your body feels earned. At night, the temperature drops hard. You wrap yourself in a rough wool blanket and lie in the hayloft beside Nora. Outside, the wind combs through the grass, whispering like old city alleys, but softer, as though the earth itself remembers your footsteps and forgives them. You start keeping a small journal, one you bought for 5 cents at the general store. The pages smell faintly of glue and coal smoke. Each entry is simple. June 14, fed 6 horses. Nora stitched 2 bridles. No fights. June 15, river high from last night's rain. Thought about day. Wonder if he's sober. Writing steadies you. It makes the past feel smaller, like a thing you can fold away. One afternoon, while hauling water barrels, you meet a man named Lester Crane. He's a blacksmith from down the road, older, with eyes that squint against the light. His hands are burnt and cracked, his shirt smeared with soot. When he talks, his voice carries the gravel of a man who spent his life arguing with fire. "You from the city?" he asks, tightening a bolt on a wagon wheel. You nod. 5 points. He whistles low. "Hard place. Saw it once. Smelled it for a week." You half smile. "That's about right." He studies you for a long while. "Don't look back too much." Land's got a way of erasing men who keep their eyes behind M. The words stay with you. That night, as rain drips from the stable roof, you find yourself repeating them softly, as though saying them aloud might make them true. But even here, the landscape holds reminders of what you left. The local boys who sneer when you walk into town, the whispers about Irish blood and city trash, the way a shopkeeper counts your change twice before handing it over. You keep your voice even, your hands steady. You've learned how to hide your anger, how to tuck it away like a knife you don't plan to use. And still, there's pride in you. A quiet one. You start to see that being from the points means knowing how to survive anything. When a storm tears through the valley one night, you're the first to move. Tying the horses, latching the doors, anchoring the barrels. The wind shrieks like it used to between the alleys back home. Nora clings to your arm, and you whisper to her the way your mother once dead. Just noise, love. Wind and rain can't hurt you if you don't let it in. When morning comes, half the roof is gone, and O'Dull's hay is scattered across the field. But the horses are safe, and the man himself just nods once before lighting his pipe. "You did good," he says. "That's all, but it's more than enough." Autumn creeps in slow. The leaves turn, the air sharpens, and you find the rhythm of this new life. You begin to teach Nora to read from the old Bible O'Dull keeps in his office. Her voice is soft, uncertain at first, but she gets bolder. When she laughs, really laughs, you realize how long it's been since you've heard that sound. Sometimes, when the day is done, you walk down to the river. You watch the current slide past, dark and steady. You think of the men you left. Shone, Kearney, the dead rabbits still fighting for corners of dirt. You wonder if they remember you, or if in the points, memory is a luxury no one can afford. The world is changing. You can feel it in the wind. The telegraph lines hum across the valley, trains are starting to push farther north, and word of gold and war drifts from the papers like sparks. You're still just one man with rough hands and tired eyes, but something inside you has shifted. You're learning to live without looking over your shoulder. Then, one night, as the moon rises cold over the stables, you hear a faint song from the fields. A worker heading home, maybe, or just the wind carrying echoes of the city. You close your eyes and see the 5 points again in the flicker of lamplight, the glint of a straight razor, the heat of the crowd as the dead rabbits marched. You see your mother's face in the doorway, your father at the docks, your younger self with a torn coat and a spark in your chest that refused to go out. You don't feel shame or pride, just a kind of peace. The past, you realize, isn't something you escape. It's something you grow around, like ivy twisting up an old wall. Holding on, but reaching always for light. You head back to the loft, where Nora sleeps curled against the chill. You tuck the blanket over her shoulders, then lie down beside her, the smell of wood smoke faint in the air. Outside, the last crickets of the season sing to the stars. You breathe in, you breathe out, and somewhere deep in your chest, the city still beats, not as a wound, but as a memory. It will always be there, whispering from the alleys, reminding you who you were and how far you've come. But here, under the wide country sky, you finally let the noise fade into distance. The landscape has changed, and so have you. Winter does not come all at once. It seeps into the valley the way cold water seeps through a boot, slow, unseen, and merciless once it's there. By late November, the grass is brittle, the mornings rimed in frost. Your breath hangs before you like a ghost of the city, curling in the pale light. The horses' coats thicken, the hens roost longer, and you and Nora start sleeping under 2 blankets instead of 1. Each morning, before dawn, you break ice from the trough with a hammer. The sound rings through the yard, sharp, echoing off the bare trees. The first few swings bite at your wrists. By the time the sun rises, you can't feel your fingers. Odell watches you from the stable doorway, pipe clenched between his teeth. He doesn't offer to help, he never does. That's his test of a man. Let the work speak first. You learn how to listen to your own body, when to push, when to stop. The old city rhythm fades, replaced by something slower, deeper. Each day feels like its own story, the squeal of frozen wood, the smell of horse breath, the scrape of hay across splintered floors. You're tired, but it's the kind of tired that feels earned. By December, the fields are white. Snow piles against the fences, and the sky hangs low and grey. The horses stamp restlessly in their stalls, steaming with heat. You feed them in silence, your breath and theirs mixing in clouds. One morning, while hauling a sack of feed, your back seizes, a bolt of pain sharp enough to make you drop the bag. You bite down hard on a curse and stand there, teeth grinding, waiting for the spasm to pass. The old ache in your ribs flares too, the one from the alley brawl months ago. Nora sees the way you move and says nothing at first. But that night, while you sit by the small stove, she speaks softly. You'll break yourself if you keep at it like that. You shake your head. Work's all we've got. She stares at you, the lamplight catching her eyes. You've got me too, Tommy. You can't meet her gaze. Not yet. You're afraid of what you'll see in it, fear, pity, or worse, the same tired resilience that used to live in your mother's eyes. The days blur. You measure time by the depth of snow on the fence posts. The men at the tavern talk about the banks failing, about wages cut in half. Even here, the panic of 57 sends its long fingers north. Odell starts paying in credit instead of coin. Until spring, he says. You nod, though it means little. Credit doesn't fill a belly. Sometimes, after dark, you and Nora walk to the edge of town, just to hear the river under the ice. It murmurs like a trapped voice, low and steady. You find comfort in that sound, a reminder that something still moves beneath all this stillness. One evening, a wagon overturns on the road, 2 horses tangled, the driver pinned beneath the axle. You and Odell run out with lanterns. The air is sharp enough to bite skin. Together, you lift the wheel just enough to pull the man free. Your hands bleed from the cold, but you don't notice until afterward. The driver's name is Samuel. He's a black man from the outskirts, works for the mill. His leg is broken clean through. You and Odell get him into the stable loft, set his leg the best you can with splints and rope. Nora bowls water, rips old cloth for bandages. You work in silence, side by side. When the worst of it is done, Samuel grips your arm. You saved my life, he says, his voice hoarse. You shake your head. Just did what needed doing. He smiles faintly. Most men wouldn't have stopped. That night, long after the fire dies, you sit awake listening to his breathing. The world feels fragile in the dark. The weeks crawl on. You lose weight. The colluses on your palms split. Nora's hands crack from the cold, her knuckles bleeding through the stitches. But neither of you complains. There's no point. You've learned the law of survival. If you stop moving, you vanish. When Samuel is strong enough to walk again, he offers to teach you a thing or two in return. He shows you how to wrap rags under your boots to keep the frost from biting through. How to warm your hands against your ribs before gripping metal. Cold's just another kind of hunger, he says. Feed it a little, and it won't eat you whole. You carry those words with you. Simple truths, learned not from books or priests, but from men who've been too close to the edge. In February, Odell falls ill. A cough that rattles deep in his chest, a fever that won't break. You take over his work without being asked, feeding, hauling, tending to the horses that paw at the frozen ground. Each night, you bring him broth and sit a while. He barely speaks, just nods once, his face grey in the lamplight. Nora looks at you with quiet worry. You're running yourself thin, she says. You smile weakly. Ain't much left to run down. But she knows better. She knows the set of your jaw, the stubborn line of your shoulders. The same as Di's once was, before drink hollowed him out. By March, the fever breaks. Odile survives, but he's smaller somehow, shrunken behind the eyes. He calls you, son, once by accident, and it catches you off guard. You pretend not to hear, though something warm and painful lodges in your throat. The snow begins to melt. The roads turn to mud. The air smells of thaw and rot. You spend the first warm evening sitting on the fence rail, watching the light fade behind the hills. Nora joins you, a shawl wrapped tight around her. Feels like the world's waking up, she says. You nod. About time. She tilts her head. Do you ever miss it? The city. You think for a long while, sometimes. Not the fights, not the noise, but the pulse, maybe. The way everything felt alive, even when it was dying. She laughs softly. You always did like trouble, maybe, you say, smiling. But I like peace more. The silence between you is easy now. Familiar. The river hums in the distance, swollen with meltwater. You can smell the soil again, damp and full of promise. The toll on your body has been steep. Scars, aches, hunger. But the toll on your soul feels lighter than it's ever been. You realize that pain, when it's honest, can be its own kind of healing. That night, as you lie down in the loft, you feel the pulse of the earth through the boards. The steady rhythm of a world still turning. You breathe in the scent of hay and ash and river wind. You've carried the weight of the city with you all this way, but here, in the quiet dark, you feel it loosening. The old ghosts will never vanish, but they've learned to sleep beside you. The physical toll is real. Your body knows it, but it's no longer punishment. It's proof. You close your eyes, listening to the slow sigh of the horses, the creak of the beams, the whisper of Thor outside, and for the first time in your life, exhaustion feels like peace. Spring came early that year, soft rain washing the grime from the eaves, new shoots pushing through the thawed mud. The air was sweet again, full of promise. But in the hills, promise always came with a price. By late March, Samuel's limp was gone. He could work again, stronger now, his eyes clearer than they'd ever been. You'd grown used to his presence, the steady rhythm of his laughter, the quiet way he mended what others would have thrown away. He'd become part of the rhythm, as natural as the creak of the stable doors. Then one morning he tells you he's leaving. The mill's opening again, he says, his hands resting on the fence rail. Wedges are fair, and I've got kin out that way. Time to stand on my own feet. You nod, though your throat tightens. You'll do well. You manage. He smiles. We both will. You shake hands, rough palms, calloused and scarred, each man carrying a different kind of history. As he walks down the muddy road, you feel something tug in your chest. You hadn't realized how rare it was to meet someone who understood what silence was for. That night, the farm feels emptier. The wind whistles through the cracks like it's trying to find him. Nora sits by the fire, sewing, her head bowed. Good man, she says softly. Yeah, you answer. Good man. The days lengthen. The world greens again. But Odell doesn't recover like the land does. He's still coughing, still losing weight. Some days he doesn't leave his chair by the window, the pipe gone cold in his hand. You take on more of his work, ploughing, shoeing, mucking out the stalls. He watches, silent, as though measuring the distance between your strength and his fading one. Then one evening in April, as you're spreading hay, you hear a dull thump from the house. You run inside. He's collapsed near the hearth, one hand clutching his chest. You and Nora get him to bed. She fetches the doctor, but it's no use. The man comes and goes in the same hour, shaking his head. Heart's too worn, he says. It's a mercy he lasted this long. That night, O'Donnell dies in his sleep. No ceremony, no last words, just a sigh. And then nothing. You sit beside him until dawn, watching the first light crawl across the floorboards. You don't cry. You just sit, because you've learned that grief, like work, needs silence to do its part. When Nora comes to you in the morning, she lays a hand on your shoulder. He was proud of you, she says. You shake your head. He was proud of the horses. But she doesn't argue. She knows better than to pull at grief when it's still raw. The funeral is small. A few men from town, the priest and you and Nora standing off to the side. The earth is soft from rain, and the shovel sinks easily. You toss the last of the dirt yourself. No one says much afterward. In the days that follow, the house feels hollow. His tools hang untouched on the wall, his boots by the door. You think about leaving them there, as if he might come back for them. Then the landlord rides out from town, a tall man in a grey coat, papers in hand. He informs you that with O'Donnell gone, the farm reverts to the estate. You'll have to vacate by the end of the month, he says, as though it's nothing more than weather. You stand in the doorway, hands at your sides, heart steady. We've no place to go, you tell him. He shrugs. Not my affair. You think of hitting him, you don't. Instead, you watch him ride away, his horse's hooves splattering mud across O'Donnell's gate. Nora comes out quietly. What'll we do? You stare at the horizon, where the trees blur into the pale spring sky. We'll find work. We always do. She nods, though her hands tremble around her shawl. 2 weeks later, the farm is stripped bare. The animals sold, the tools packed. You take one last look at the stable, the smell of hay, the shadows where O'Donnell once stood. You trace your hand along the worn wood of the stall door. You whisper, though you're not sure to whom, Odell, the land, or something deeper that you can't quite name. As you walk down the road with Nora, a single crow takes flight from the fence post. Its cry cuts through the morning air, sharp and lonely. You don't look back. You can't. You spend the next month traveling, working odd jobs where you can, sleeping in barns, eating what the road offers. The world feels wide again, too wide. But in the quiet, you realize something: the city had taken everything from you in one violent sweep. The country takes things more slowly, but it still takes. Each loss carves you down to something harder, smaller, more enduring. You remember what Samuel said before he left: cold's just another kind of hunger. Now you understand. Loss is too. It eats, but it also clears a space, and in that hollow something new can grow, if you let it. One night, under a sky bright with early summer stars, you and Nora camp beside the road. The fire is small, the night air cool. She leans against you, silent. The world feels infinite, yet empty. After a long pause, she murmurs, "You think we'll ever stop losing things?" You stare into the fire. "No," you say. "But maybe we'll learn how to keep what matters in between." She closes her eyes, and the crackle of the fire fills the space where words can't go. Above, the stars shimmer, cold, eternal, indifferent. But you've learned to love them for that. Because while everything else changes, burns, or fades, the sky keeps its silence. And in that silence, you find something close to peace again. The road turns from mud to gravel, from gravel to ruts carved into the green hills of the Hudson Valley. Each mile takes you farther from the city's stink and closer to the deep woods. The air smells of pine sap and iron, heavy with the scent of thawing rivers. By June, you and Nora reach the edge of Troy, half town, half factory. The docks hum with new work lumber, brick, iron, and canal freight bound for the Great Lakes. It's here you find them, the timber crews, rough men with shoulders like axe handles, waiting for passage north. You spend what's left of your savings on food, salt pork, hard bread, and apples going soft in their skins. Then you ask around the taverns until someone points you to a man named Cutter. He's sitting in the corner, boots on the table, coat patched with bare fur. His eyes are grey as winter. You swing an axe, boy. Swung worse, you answer. He grins. That'll do. He takes you both on. The girl as cook's help, you as green hand. The pay's low, but there's promise of steady work and a bunk under a roof that doesn't leak. For people like you, that's all the fortune there is. The journey upriver lasts 3 days by barge. You share the deck with barrels of pitch and the smell of tar that clings to your clothes. Nora spends her time near the prow, watching the water break against the hull, her hair catching the sun like copper wire. Cutter's men sing as they work the poles. Roll, boys, roll. The river's deep and wide. The trees fall easy when the frost has died. You join in after a while, your voice rough from dessous. It feels strange, this rhythm of labor and laughter without the edge of fear. Even the shouting sounds different here. At night, you camp along the riverbanks. Fires burn low, the smell of pine smoke drifting into the stars. The forest hums with unseen life, owls, frogs, and the whisper of wind through black branches. It's a sound you've never known, but it feels like something ancient recognizing you. On the 4th morning, the camp breaks before dawn. Mist rolls over the river like breath. The oxen pull the carts into the trees, the path narrowing until it swallows you whole. The forest is vast, endless trunks rising into fog, light falling in green shards through the leaves. The air tastes wet and cold. Cutter calls it God's workhouse. You believe him. You spend the first week learning the rhythm: dawn, coffee and bread. Morning, felling trees, shouting, timber, as giants crack and fall. Noon, salt pork and beans. Evening, hauling logs, sharpening blades by lantern light. The work is brutal but clean. No knives in the dark, no cobblestones slick with blood. Just the strain of muscle and the bite of the axe. For the first time in your life, you sleep without listening for footsteps behind you. Nora cooks in the mess shed, stirring pots of stew big enough to drown in. The men treat her with respect. Not pity, not hunger, just the quiet courtesy reserved for something that keeps them human. At night, she reads to you from a tattered book someone left behind. The Last of the Mohicans. Her voice rises soft and clear over the crackle of the fire, filling the woods with something tender. You close your eyes and listen, and for a moment, you forget the slums, the screams, the smell of the old brewery. The forest has its ghosts too, but they don't bite, they watch. By midsummer, your hands are thick with colace. You can fell a pine in 6 minutes, haul a half-ton of timber, and still have strength left to mend the sleds at dusk. Cutter claps you on the back one day. City boys turned wild, he laughs. Knew you had it in you. You grin. It's the first time you've been proud of your strength instead of ashamed of how you earned it. That night, you and Nora sit by the river, the firelight painting her face in gold. She looks older somehow, steady, sure of herself. You ever think we'd make it this far? She asks. You shake your head. Didn't think we'd make it past the 5 points. She smiles. Maybe Ma was right. Maybe we were meant for the water after all. You nod, staring into the dark where the current moves, endless and silent. The water brought us here, you say. Maybe it'll take us further still. But peace never lasts long for people like you. One evening in late August, as the sun bleeds red behind the trees, a shout rises from the lower camp. You grab your axe and run. Smoke curls through the pines, someone's lantern overturned. The sawmill shed is burning, dry timber snapping like gunfire. Men rush with buckets, shouting, slipping in mud. Cutter's orders vanish in the chaos. You see Nora near the supply tent, trying to pull sacks of flour clear of the flames. You reach her just as a beam collapses, the heat rolling over you like a storm. You drag her back, choking on smoke. The fire roars higher. By dawn, half the camp is ash. The mill's gone, the food with it. Cutter swears and spits into the dirt. That's it for this lot, he says. No wages now. We'll split what's left and head south. You look at the charred remains, the blackened tools. Weeks of work gone in hours. Nora sits on a fallen log, her face streaked with soot, eyes hollow. We'll start again, you say quietly. She doesn't answer. She just stares at the ashes as if she's seen this before. In the firelight of another world, another loss. When the crew breaks apart, Cutter presses a coin into your palm. You did good work, boy, he says. Don't let the world grind it out of you. You nod. He walks away without looking back. The others scatter down the river paths, their songs fading into the pines. You and Nora stand alone beside the ruins of the camp. Smoke drifts between the trees, curling into the pale morning sky. You take her hand. Come on, you say. Wherever the road goes next. She squeezes your fingers once, hard, and together you start walking. By midday, the forest closes behind you, the burned camp nothing but memory. Ahead, the hills roll northward, green and endless. Somewhere beyond them lies Canada, or the lakes, or just another kind of hunger. You don't know. But for the first time, the uncertainty doesn't frighten you. It feels like freedom, raw, uncertain, alive. You glance at Nora. Her face is turned toward the sun, eyes bright, steps steady. And for the first time since you were children, you let yourself believe that maybe, just maybe, you're no longer running from the city. Maybe you're running towards something instead. The first frost comes early that year. It slicks the leaves under your boots, paints the branches white before the sun burns it off. The road north has grown quiet, just the two of you now, Nora's shawl wrapped tight against the cold. Each breath hangs in the air like smoke. The river trails beside you, its current dark and fast. You follow it because it's easier than trusting the woods. For days you see no one, only the mark of wagon wheels frozen into ruts, the tracks of deer, and once, the paw print of a bear. Nights are colder now. You build small fires, careful to burn low, because you've heard stories, deserters, thieves, men turned half wild by hunger. But you keep walking. By the 10th day, the land flattens. The trees thin out, replaced by rolling fields rimmed with frost. Smoke rises in the distance, small even columns. A camp, maybe. Or a settlement. Nora looks to you, silent question in her eyes. You nod. It's better to risk it than freeze in the open. It turns out to be a caravan. Half a dozen wagons pulled by tired mules, their sides painted with fading names: G. Mullen & Sons, Leatherworks, Albany. Families, tradesmen, a few single men, all heading north toward Canada. The panic of 1857 has emptied pockets and broken mills from here to Buffalo. Work has gone, banks have folded, and the talk in every town is the same. Did go north, start over. They let you and Nora fall in with them. You trade your labor for a spot beside one of the wagons, cutting wood, mending wheels, fetching water. They're good people, quiet but wary. Everyone's lost something: a job, a farm, a son. You recognize that look, the hollow patience of the beaten poor. There's a woman named Mrs. Larkin, grey-haired and kind. She takes to Nora right away, teaching her how to stitch torn canvas and make stew from almost nothing. Sometimes at night, the two of them talk by the fire, low and soft, like they've always known each other. You sit apart, carving a scrap of wood into a rough figurine. You don't know why. Maybe just to keep your hands busy, but by the time it takes shape, it looks a little like your mother's rosary, the one you pawned years ago. Distances stretch strange in the open country. Miles don't feel the same as they did in the city. You measure progress now by rivers crossed and sunrises endured. Mrs. Larkin says it's about 120 miles to the St. Lawrence, maybe a week if the weather holds, But the weather doesn't hold. On the third morning, snow begins to fall, light at first, then thick, slanting sheets. It stings your face, blinds your steps. The oxen balk, the wheels clog. The caravan halts in a grove of pines. You help dig a hollow for the wagons, stacking branches to break the wind. By nightfall, everyone's hands are raw and bleeding, but the fire burns steady. Nora passes out cups of boiled cornmeal, her cheeks flushed from the heat. She catches your eye and smiles. Feels almost like home, she says. You don't correct her. Maybe warmth, food, and the sound of people breathing nearby is all home ever means. By morning, the storm's gone, leaving a world washed clean. The fields glimmer with ice. The wagon tarps sparkle like glass. You hear the crack of trees splitting under the weight of frost. It's beautiful and cruel in the same breath. The caravan moves slower now. 2 oxen have gone lame, 1 wagon lost a wheel on the frozen ruts. Every mile feels longer than the last. But the air smells different, crisp, metallic like a promise. When the wind shifts, you can taste it, the faint tang of river water, cold and wide. The border's close. That night, you lie awake listening to the groan of trees and the creak of leather straps. The stars are so clear they seem to hum. You think of the 5 points, the gaslights, the dripping alleys, the sound of fights spilling through windows, and it feels like another lifetime. You wonder if the city remembers you at all. 2 days later, you reach the edge of the St. Lawrence. The river stretches a mile wide, black and shining, its surface filmed with ice at the edges. On the far shore lies Canada, a dark line of evergreens under a low white sky. The others gather close, stamping their feet, breath pluming like steam. There, Mrs. Larkin whispers. That's it, freedom, they say. You stare across the water. Freedom. You've heard that word before, tossed around like coin in taverns, promised by priests and politicians. It's never felt real. But now, looking at the wide river, it seems less like a dream and more like a test. The crossing's dangerous this time of year. Ice too thin for walking, water too cold for swimming. But Cutter's old lessons echo in your head, how to judge current, how to test a surface before trusting it. You take a pole from the wagon and prod the edge. It holds, then cracks, then holds again. Nora steps beside you. We can make it. You nod slowly. If we go light. The caravan argues, some wanting to wait for sunrise, others fearing patrols from the border guards who've started turning people back. In the end, fear wins. You go at dusk, the sky turning violet and the river glinting like lead. You lead the way, boots slipping on the glassy surface. Each step sings a low note, like a drum deep under your feet. Behind you, the caravan follows, 1 wagon at a time. Breath clouds rise and vanish. Halfway across, a crack rings out, sharp as gunfire. The ice splinters beneath the rear wagon. A mule screams. You spin, shouting for them to move, to unyoke, to run. The men rush, axes chopping at frozen leather, hands bleeding from the cold. The ice groans, then stills. For a moment, all you hear is the wind. Then another sound, a child crying. One of the small ones has slipped, his leg plunged into the black water. Without thinking, you drop your pack and crawl back, the ice biting your palms. You grab the boy by the coat, heaving him free. Nora's voice shouts your name. You drag him to the nearest sled, wrap him in a blanket, and look once more at the water. The current swirls beneath the fractured skin of ice, hungry but retreating. By the time you reach the far bank, night has fallen. You stumble onto solid ground, knees shaking. The rest follow, silent, eyes wide, faces ghost pale in the moonlight. The fire they build on the shore is small, but it's enough. Mrs. Larkin presses a cup of broth into your hands. You did good, she says. You don't answer, your fingers burn from the thawing, your body aches with cold. But in your chest, something else burns, a quiet certainty, deeper than pride. You've crossed something larger than a river. The next morning, sunlight filters through fir branches, soft and gold. You stand at the water's edge, watching mist rise off the surface. The tracks of the caravan stretch behind you like a scar through the frost. Ahead lies forest and road and whatever work waits beyond. Nora steps up beside you, her shawl dusted with snow. We really did it, she says. Her voice trembles, not from cold but from wonder. You nod, unable to speak for a long time. The wind moves through the trees, carrying the smell of wood smoke and new soil. You turn to her and say, we're on new ground now. And though you mean the land, you also mean yourselves. The first weeks in Canada feel like waking from a long sleep, only to find the dream colder than you imagined. The settlement the caravan had heard of, somewhere past the pines near the Rideau Canal, turns out to be little more than a cluster of cabins and a mill half frozen shut. There is work, yes, but it's the kind that eats through skin and hope, like hauling timber, clearing stone, scraping at frozen earth that refuses to give. You and Nora stay in a shack near the tree line. Its walls are patched with bark and old newspaper, ink bleeding down where the roof leaks. At night the frost creeps in like a tide, glazing the inside of the windows. You burn pine needles when the wood runs out. The smell is sharp, sweet, and a little like home, if home had ever been clean. The days shorten fast. The sun is gone before you finish your shift at the mill. The river freezes solid by December. The air smells of iron and smoke, every breath biting your lungs raw. You work for a man named Blakely, a foreman with a voice like gravel. Wages are meager, 50 cents a day, half paid in meal and salt, but you take it. When he calls you, 5 points, you bite your tongue. There's no room here for pride. Nora helps in the kitchen house, stirring stew and sewing torn sleeves. She's thinner than before, but her eyes are bright, her laughter quiet and quick. She hums while she works, Irish songs, mostly, half remembered from your mother. At night, you eat together by candlelight. The flame wavers between you, soft and gold, but it can't chase the cold from the corners. You share what little you have, a piece of bread, a story, silence. And sometimes, just before sleep, you can almost believe that this was the life you were meant to build. Almost. Then comes January, the month that grinds men down to bone. A blizzard sweeps in from the north. 3 days of wind so fierce it strips the bark from trees. The world turns white, then grey, then nothing. You shovel snow from the roof by lantern light, your hands blistered through your gloves. The sound of the wind is a living thing, moaning against the boards. On the second night, the storm rips the chimney loose. Smoke fills the cabin. You and Nora stumble out into the dark, coughing, dragging your blankets behind you. The wind cuts through wool and skin alike. The sky is a blur of snow and firelight from the nearby camp. You take shelter in the mill house with a handful of others, 6 men, 1 woman, and a boy no older than 10. The floor is cold stone. The only warmth comes from a forge still faintly glowing. You huddle around it, backs pressed close. No one speaks much. Breath clouds hang between you, vanishing into the dark. Somewhere outside, a tree splits with a sound like gunfire. You think of the alleys back in New York, how you used to shiver there too, but with company, the noise of drunks, the bark of laughter, the hiss of lamps. This silence is worse. It feels like the world has ended and forgotten to tell you. By the third day, food runs low. The storm still howls. You take turns stoking the forge, breaking apart old tools and boards to feed it. Your stomach gnaws itself hollow. A man named Kemp mutters that they should risk going out, find the storehouse. If we don't, we starve, he says. His eyes are bright with hunger. Blakely, the foreman, snaps back. Step outside and you'll freeze before you find your boots. The argument dies quick. Everyone's too tired to fight. Later that night, while the others sleep, you see Nora sitting by the door, staring into the snow through a crack in the boards. Her hands are wrapped around the little wooden carving you made on the river. She turns it in her fingers, slow and steady, like it's a prayer. You kneel beside her. We'll make it, you whisper. She nods, not looking at you. I know. But you can hear it in her voice, the doubt, quiet as a breath. When the storm finally breaks, the world outside looks carved from glass. Trees bent under white weight, the sky a pale sheet, no birds, no sound but the creak of settling snow. You help dig out the cabins. 3 roofs have collapsed. 1 man's found dead, frozen with his axe still in hand. The mill wheel is cracked, the river frozen to the bed. Blakely swears under his breath, says he'll dock pay for repairs. You don't even answer. You just keep working. That night, Nora's coughing worsens. You boil water for her, steep pine needles for tea, the way Cutter taught you. The smell is sharp and green. She drinks it without complaint, her eyes closed, face pale as paper. Outside, the wind starts again. Not a storm this time, just the low, endless sigh of winter breathing. You sit by her side, holding her hand through the blanket. Her fingers are cold. You remember the 5 points? She asks suddenly. Don't talk, you say. I want to, she whispers. Sometimes I dream about it, the noise, the lights, the heat from the cobbles when the rain came down. You nod, throat tight. We'll go back one day, you lie. She smiles faintly. Not me. I think I'm already there. You look away, because you can't bear to see what's slipping from her eyes. 3 days later, she's gone. It happens quietly, before dawn. Her hand still in yours, her breath soft against your wrist until it isn't. You sit there for a long time, listening to the wind move through the cracks. The candle burns low. The flame flickers once, twice, and dies. Outside, the snow begins again. You bury her near the edge of the river when the ground softens enough to dig. The earth is dark and wet, smelling of iron and thaw. You mark the grave with a cross made from birch. No words, no priest. Just the sound of the ice breaking upstream, steady as a heartbeat. You stay there until the sun climbs high, melting frost from your coat. You don't cry. The cold won't let you. But inside, something gives way, like a wall finally cracking under its own weight. You realize then that all your life, you've been running. From hunger, from gangs, from ghosts, and the running has brought you here, to the edge of silence. The forest watches, the river moves. The air smells of pine and loss. You whisper her name once and the sound vanishes into the wind. You go back to the camp, but it's not the same. The faces are hollow, the laughter gone. Work continues, but your hands move without you. You eat because you must. You breathe because your body hasn't learned how to stop. And somewhere in the stillness, beneath the cold and the grief, a strange calm takes root. Not peace, not yet, but something that looks like the beginning of it. The wall has broken. The silence has entered. And for the first time in your life, you let it stay. The snow begins to melt in hesitant drips, tiny, almost musical. It's March now. The air still holds its teeth, but the light feels different, softer, stretching longer across the hills. The sound of the river grows louder each day, the ice cracking like glass under pressure. You've taken to walking at dawn, before the mill whistle blows. It's the only hour that belongs to you alone. The forest, pale and breathless, seems to hold its own kind of prayer. Every branch drips, every footstep whispers against the thawing ground. You follow the river upstream, past the half-buried wheel, past the clearing where you buried Nora. The snow has sunk around the cross, leaving a ring of dark soil. You kneel there sometimes not to speak but to listen. To the wind, to the thaw, to whatever remains. It isn't grief anymore, not quite. It's something quieter, like the echo of it, softened by distance and time. One morning, you spot a flicker of movement by the riverbank, a fox, red against the white. It stares at you for a moment, unafraid, its fur ruffled and thin from winter. Then it steps closer to the water, noses at the edge and drinks. You watch it, breath held. The fox's reflection ripples across the ice, then breaks as it steps lightly away. The grace of it stirs something in you, a reminder that life keeps moving, even through ruin. You pick up a smooth stone from the riverbed, cold and dark, and turn it in your hand. The surface is perfect, shaped by years of current. You slip it into your pocket without thinking. Later, when you feel the weight of it there, it steadies you. The mill reopens with spring. Work returns, harder, heavier, but it fills the hours. Blakely's voice booms again through the yard. The men curse, spit, laugh. The world creaks back to life. One afternoon, as you haul timber toward the saw, you catch sight of the boy from the blizzard, Sam, they call him. He's smaller than you remember, sleeves too long, face still hollow from hunger. He's struggling to lift a beam twice his size. You step over, wordless, and help him. He blinks up at you. Thanks, he mutters. You nod. Keep your back straight, you'll hurt yourself. He tries again. This time, he manages. That night, he follows you to the fire pit outside the mill. You share bread, silence, and a few words about the city, how loud it used to be, how dark the alleys were. His eyes widen, hungry not for food, but for stories. You tell him one, not the truth, not the full of it, but enough. About a place where streets shone after the rain, where people danced under gaslight even when the world was cruel. He laughs. It sounds like a spark in the night. For a moment, something inside you warms. Weeks pass. The snow gives way to mud, then grass. The forest greens again, cautious but alive. Birds return, filling the mornings with sound. You fix the roof of the cabin, patch the window, plant a few seeds behind the mill house, just to see if they'll take. You find yourself humming sometimes, Nora's songs, low and rough. The notes come out like breath against memory. The stone in your pocket grows smooth from your thumb. You start to think of it as a heartbeat, small but constant. And one morning, without really planning to, you decide to leave the mill. You tell Blakely you're heading west. He grunts something that sounds like a blessing, though you doubt he meant it that way. You pack your tools, your coat, a crust of bread, and the stone. The boy Sam runs up as you're saddling a borrowed mule. Where you going? He asks. You look toward the horizon, where the mist meets the hills, where the land keeps going. Don't know yet, you say. Just on. He nods, understanding more than his years should allow. Before you go, you hand him the wooden carving from your pocket, the one you'd once made for Nora. Keep this, you tell him, for luck. He stares at it, then back at you. Wasn't it yours? You smile faintly. It was meant to be shared. He holds it tight. Will I see you again? You shrug. The world's smaller than it looks. And then you turn, leading the mule down the muddy road, your boots sinking deep with each step. The air smells of pine and meltwater. The light ripples across the thawed river like a promise. That night, you make camp near the edge of the woods. The stars burn sharp and cold overhead, so many so bright, they almost hum. You sit by the fire, You're back against a tree and close your eyes. For the first time in a long while, you don't see the alleys of 5 Points, you see the forest, the river, the fox, and Nora's face, not as you lost her, but as she was once, alive, laughing, eyes full of light. You whisper into the dark, "Why made it?" The fire cracks softly. Somewhere in the trees an owl calls, and as you drift towards sleep, you realize that maybe this, at last, is what survival means, not escaping death, but carrying life forward, one quiet step at a time. The city rises before you like a ghost rebuilt from smoke and memory. It's been more than 10 years since you last walked these streets. 10 years since you turned your back on the brick labyrinth that raised and nearly devoured you. And yet, as the ferry docks and the skyline of lower Manhattan looms through the morning fog, you feel something familiar tighten in your chest. New York has changed, but not completely. The old bones are still there, buried beneath the new brick, the iron bridges, the growing spires of commerce. The air still hums with hunger and ambition. The river still smells of salt, rust, and coal smoke. You shoulder your pack and step off the ferry. Your boots meet cobblestone again. The city greets you not with warmth, but with noise. The clang of horseshoes, the shouts of dockmen, the hiss of steam escaping from somewhere unseen. You walk north past the markets, the dray carts, the sailors brawling over dice. Past the women with tired faces and the street urchins hawking newspapers for a penny. You pass a corner where a boy shines shoes, the same trade you once lived by. For a moment you almost stop, almost tell him to save his nickels to run. But you don't. You just nod to him, and he nods back, one survivor recognizing another. 5 Points is quieter now. Not peaceful, just older. The worst of it's been torn down, the old brewery gone, the tenements replaced by cleaner brick and wider streets. You wouldn't call it safe, but the violence has cooled. You stop at the intersection that once shaped your world. Mulberry, Anthony, Cross, Orange, Little Water. The 5 roads still meet, though they seem narrower somehow, like a stage seen from far away. You can almost hear it again. The cries of the dead rabbits, the clash of cobblestones, the desperate, angry music of survival. You lean against a lamppost, hands in your coat pockets. There's a scar on your left knuckle that never healed right. You trace it with your thumb and think of faces long gone. Paddy Burns, Red Kelly, O'Dell, Samuel, Nora. So many names, so many ghosts, and yet here you are. There's a small church now where the old market once stood. You slip inside. It's quiet, except for the distant drip of rain from the eaves. A handful of candles flicker before a statue of the Virgin. You sit in the last pew, hat in your hands, and breathe. You don't pray. You just listen, to the silence, to the faint echo of the streets outside. After a while, you reach into your pocket and pull out a smooth, dark stone. The same one from the river years ago. You've carried it through blizzards, through summers, through every place you called, for now. You set it on the pew beside you. It catches the candlelight, gleaming faintly, as if it remembers the current that once shaped it. You whisper, for all of them, and leave it there. When you stand, your knees creak. You smile at that. You've earned the sound. Outside, the rain has eased into mist. The city glows in it, gaslights shining soft through the haze, horses snorting steam, boot heels splashing through puddles. You walk without hurry. You find yourself near the edge of the river again. The same river that brought ships from Ireland, that carried the lifeblood of the city, that took and gave without mercy. You stop there and watch. The water moves steadily, reflecting the lamps in broken ribbons. For the first time, you don't see it as something to escape across. You see it as something to belong to. The city isn't your prison anymore. It's your witness. A group of boys runs past, laughing, their bare feet slapping against the wet stones. They vanish around a corner, shouting something about a race. You can't help but smile. For a moment, you see yourself among them, 19, thin, fierce, unbroken. You want to tell him everything, that the world will try to take you apart, that it will succeed, and that somehow it won't matter, that you'll lose everyone you love and still learn how to live. That someday, you'll return to this same place, older, quieter, and find that survival was never about escaping the darkness. It was about learning how to carry the light through it. You walk on, the mist rising around you like smoke. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell tolls the hour. You think of Nora's voice again, faint and tender in your memory. "We'll make it, Tommy. You'll see." You smile into the fog. "Why did?" you whisper. The river moves, eternal and indifferent, carrying the city's reflection downstream. And you stand there, hands in your pockets, just breathing. Alive. You arrive back in the city the way the tide returns to shore, slow, inevitable, and quieter than you ever imagined. The year is 1863. War news fills the streets, names whispered from battlefields you've never seen. and flags hang heavy in the July heat. But the air here carries a different kind of tension. It's not the crack of musket fire you smell. It's the smoke of unrest, thick with sweat and anger. You step off the carriage at Canal Street, the cobblestones gleaming from last night's rain. The driver's hands shake as he pockets your fare. "Careful, friend," he mutters. "The city's gone mad. Draft riot started 2 days ago." You nod, though your chest tightens. You'd heard rumors in Kingston before leaving. The Irish labourers, furious over the new conscription laws, rising against the city. The draft took the poor first, sparing the rich who could pay $300 for exemption. $300 more than you earned in a year. You look around and see it for yourself now. Smoke drifts over the rooftops. Windows are broken. A police wagon smoulders near the corner of Bowery. A crowd surges past you, shouting something you can't quite make out. Just anger, raw and alive. You breathe in, and it's like inhaling the past. The chaos feels familiar, the heat of desperation no different from the gang wars of your youth. Only now, it's not just the dead rabbits or the Bowery boys. It's the whole city. You move through the crowd carefully, keeping your hat low. Every few steps, someone pushes past. A man with a torn shirt screams about injustice, another brandishes a broken signpost like a club. You keep your distance, but you watch. You listen. The words twist through the air. Rage against the government, against the police, against anyone with skin darker than theirs. You see a young woman huddled with her child at the edge of an alley, eyes wide as the mob surges by. For a second, your instinct takes over. You move toward her, step between her and the noise. "Stay behind me," you murmur. She nods, clutching her boy tight. When the crowd passes, she looks up at you, trembling. "They burned the orphanage," she whispers. "God help them. They burned it." You don't know what to say. There's no language for that kind of cruelty, so you simply nod, help her to her feet, and point toward the docks. "Follow the river." You tell her. "Stay by the water. Someone will help you there." You watch her go. Then you stand in the smoke and think about how easily this city turns, how hunger and fear twist even the decent into something unrecognizable. By dusk, the fires paint the sky in iron and ember. You find your way back toward the 5 Points almost without thinking, drawn like a ghost to the place that once owned you. It's strange, how small it feels now. The buildings are still there, though soot-streaked and sagging. The tenements lean as if listening to the distant riot songs. The same intersection, the same crooked streets, but the sound of your boots on stone is the only thing alive here now. You stop outside a narrow building with a cracked window. Once, this was Mrs. Horan's boarding house, where you'd slept under the stairs for 2 weeks after your father disappeared. You can still smell it in your mind: soap, gin, and boiled potatoes. Now it's empty. You push the door open and step inside. Dust rises in the fading light, turning gold where it catches the fire, glow from outside. You find a chair, half broken but still standing, and sit. The room breathes around you, full of ghosts. You listen for your mother's voice, for Nora's laughter echoing down the hall, but there's only the creak of wood and the faint hiss of rain. Later, you walk back out into the street. A group of rioters passes at the far end of the block, waving torches and shouting slogans. One of them glances your way, sees the tired man with the scarred hands and the faraway eyes, and moves on. You let them pass. You've fought your battles already. You have nothing left to prove. Instead, you turn toward the river again. The same current that once promised escape now calls you home. When you reach the dock, the fires are behind you. Ahead lies water, black and still, the moon broken across its surface. You kneel there, dip your hand into the cold. It's the same river that carried your mother to this city, the same one that carried you away from it, and now it feels like it carries everything: grief, survival, memory. You whisper to it softly, "I'm still here." The river doesn't answer. But it doesn't take you either, and somehow that feels like forgiveness. As the night deepens, the riot noise fades into a dull roar, swallowed by distance and exhaustion. You find a place by the water to sit, your coat wrapped tight around you. Your reflection trembles in the ripples. You think of Cormac, of O'Doul, of Samuel, of Nora. You think of the boy you were, the one who fought in the alleys with blood on his knuckles and dreams too small to survive, and you realize something: the world never owed you peace, but it gave you the tools to make it one breath at a time. The river sighs, the fires dim. Somewhere, far away, dawn is preparing to return. You close your eyes, and the city breathes with you. Rough, wounded, but still alive. You made it back, not to what you expected, but to what you understand. The riots burn themselves out after 3 days. When the smoke finally thins, it leaves behind a city that looks like it's been crying. Charred storefronts lean into one another, their signs blackened and half fallen. Ash drifts across the cobblestones like snow. The air is heavy, not just with the smell of burnt wood, but with shame, the kind that settles deep and lingers long after the shouting ends. You walk through the wreckage at sunrise, your boots brushing through cinders. Somewhere, a church bell tolls, thin and hollow. Each step feels like walking through the bones of your past. Down by the river, volunteers have gathered. Dock workers, priests, a few policemen in scorched uniforms. They're tending to the wounded, hauling buckets of water, rebuilding makeshift shelters. The faces are drawn, but their hands are steady. You join them without a word. A woman with streaks of soot on her cheeks points to a collapsed doorway. "We need the boards cleared," she says. 2 men trapped underneath. You nod, set down your coat, and begin. The timber bites at your palms, splinters digging deep, but you don't stop. When another man moves to help, you recognize him, one of the Bowery boys, or what's left of him. The last time you saw him, he was swinging a club at your ribs. Now his hands shake as he lifts the other end of the beam. No one speaks of the past. There's no need. The rubble doesn't care who you were, only what you're willing to do now. When the doorway is finally cleared, the men inside crawl out, coughing but alive. One thanks you. The other just nods, eyes glassy, as if unsure how to start again. You don't have an answer for him. You just pat his shoulder and move on to the next broken thing. By afternoon, the riverbank has turned into a small camp. Children wrapped in blankets, women boiling water over open fires, priests scribbling names of the missing. You help build a lean-to from planks and rope, muscle memory guiding your hands. A boy nearby tries to nail 2 boards together, his grip clumsy. You kneel beside him, steady his wrist, show him how to hold the hammer so it listens instead of bites. He looks up at you with wide eyes. "You from the city?" "I was," you say. He frowns. "Why'd you come back?" You look at the half-built wall, then at him. "To help make sure you don't have to leave it the same way I did." He nods, though you can tell he doesn't fully understand. Maybe that's the point. Maybe he'll grow up in a world where he doesn't have to. Later, you find a moment to sit by the water's edge. The smoke has thinned, the wind carrying it out to sea. You dip your hands into the Hudson again, let the cold bite your skin clean. Behind you, a voice says softly, "You've a worker's hands, but a healer's patience." You turn. It's Father Dwyer, the same priest who used to walk the 5 Point streets with bread and sermons for the forgotten. His hair's gone grey, but his eyes still carry that stubborn kindness. "You remember me," you say. "Hard to forget the boy who tried to steal my collection box and left a note saying, 'Sorry after.'" You chuckle, embarrassed. "Didn't get far with it." "No one ever did, back then," he says. "But you seem to have found something better than far." He gestures toward the workers behind you, Irish, black, Italian, all rebuilding the same burnt street. They listen to you, he adds. "That's rare in this city." "I've just got a shovel," you say. He smiles faintly. "Sometimes that's all a leader needs." Over the next weeks, you stay. The city needs hands, and yours are steady now. You patch roofs, mend carts, carry bricks. At night, you help Father Dwyer at the mission, handing out soup, repairing beds. Nora's name crosses your mind often, her laughter folded into memory like a pressed flower. One night, after the others have gone to sleep, you sit by the mission door and light a candle for her. The flame dances in the quiet, its glow soft on the wood. You whisper to it, "I'm still trying." The candle flickers, bends, then steadies again. You take that as an answer. By the time autumn arrives, the streets no longer smell of fire. The city's wounds begin to heal, uneven but earnest. You watch the boys who once ran barefoot through the alleys now carrying tools instead of stones. You teach them what you can. How to mend a wheel, how to read a street sign, how to walk away from a fight without losing face. The lessons take time, but they root deep. One day you catch a glimpse of your reflection in a window. Lines at your eyes, a bit of grey in your hair, shoulders still broad but not as hard. You hardly recognize yourself. And yet, somehow, this version of you feels closer to the truth than any before. You never went west. Never struck gold or sailed beyond the horizon. Instead, you found something smaller but stronger, usefulness, purpose, a name that means help instead of fear. When people in the neighborhood speak of Tommy Callahan now, it's not with caution but respect. The boy from the 5 Points who once fought for scraps now builds homes where the hungry sleep. You don't seek thanks. You just keep working, steady as the tide. Because for the first time, the city no longer feels like something to survive. It feels like something to tend. At dusk, you walk the riverbank one last time before heading home. The water glows with the last light of day, And for a heartbeat, you imagine Cormac's voice again, low and rough. "Keep moving, lad. Always forward." You nod to the current and whisper back, "Aye, forward." The city hums behind you, alive and tired, but no longer cruel. It has become what you made of it, flawed, stubborn, enduring. And as the first stars appear over the Hudson, you realize that maybe this, quiet labor, shared bread, mended roofs, is the new world you were meant to reach all along. Not across the ocean, but right here. The morning does not so much dawn as creep, hesitantly, into the wreckage of the 5 Points. A blue, grey mist clings to the cobblestones, thick with the stench of smoke, spilled liquor, and blood not yet washed away by rain. You wake on a cot in the back of St. Philip's, the tiny mission church that still stands like a cracked tooth amid the rubble. The priest, Father O'Malley, has patched your arm with whiskey and rags. Your ribs ache, your lip is split, and the copper taste of last night still coats your tongue. For a long while you don't move. You listen instead to the distant clatter of wagons, the coughs of the poor lined up at the door for bread, the faint murmurs of the sisters tending to the wounded. It feels as if the city itself is holding its breath, waiting to see if it has survived its own fury. You remember flashes. The Bowery boys scattering into the fog, the dead rabbits pulling back through the alleys, the red lanterns swinging above as the police finally marched in. You remember Nora's face in that moment before you fell, her hand reaching, her eyes wide, and you wonder if she made it home. When you finally rise, your reflection in a cracked mirror startles you. You barely recognize yourself, hollow-eyed, streaked with soot and blood, hair matted. But somewhere deep, below the exhaustion and the bruises, something else flickers, not pride exactly, but a stubborn kind of survival. You step outside. The 5 Points lies in uneasy silence. The streets are littered with broken bottles, torn banners, bits of brick. Children dart through puddles, scavenging anything worth selling. A boot sole, a torn hat, a dented pot. A few policemen lean against lampposts, pretending to keep order, but mostly looking for someone to shake down. You make your way toward Paradise Square, where the riot began. There's still a burned cart in the center, its wheels melted into the earth. On the edge of the square, a newspaper boy calls out the headline in a voice too young for the horror he's selling. "O gang wa if bomwive, d8, henendrads endured." You buy a paper with the last cent in your pocket. The words blur as you read stories of chaos, corruption, heroism. The dead rabbits and Bowery boys both blamed. Politicians calling for reform. Preachers calling for salvation. Nothing about the faces you know. Mick, Red Dan, Nora, just statistics and pity. You fold the paper and keep walking. Down by the docks, the air shifts, cleaner, touched by salt and wind. Ships creak in their moorings, and you watch a cargo vessel being loaded for New Orleans. Men move briskly, laughing, free from the weight of 5 Points. For a moment you imagine yourself among them, sunburned, tanned, far from this rot. A hand brushes your shoulder. You turn. It's Nora. Her hair is tied back with a rag, her face streaked with soot, but her eyes are bright. "You're alive," she says simply, and something inside you loosens. A knot untied. She tells you the mission took her in when the fighting started. Father O'Malley said you'd been carried in later, unconscious. She's been waiting, praying, feeding the hungry with what little food the sisters had. You nod, listening, every word grounding you again in this fragile reality. Together you sit on the wharf, watching the gulls sweep low over the brown water. Nora talks about maybe finding work in a laundry uptown. You talk, for the first time, about leaving, maybe the docks, maybe the railroad, maybe the West. But for now, you sit in silence. You let the breeze cool the bruises on your face. Around you, the city mends itself, brick by brick, lie by lie, dream by dream. The gangs will rise again, the hunger will return. The 5 Points will keep breathing, stubborn as the rats that crawl its walls. But so will you, because in a place that worships survival, to simply wake and keep walking, that is rebellion enough. The ships creak, the tide turns, the day grows brighter. You stand, and for the first time in your life, you do not look back. The wind smells of iron and brine, the scent of the docks at dawn. You stand beside Nora, the fog curling around your boots like ghosts reluctant to let you go. The East River murmurs against the pilings, whispering promises of elsewhere. It is the morning after you decided. The decision wasn't a loud one, no shouting, no desperate oath. It came quietly, like all real changes do. A simple truth settling into your bones: if you stay here you will die. Maybe not in body, not right away, but in spirit, worn down by the hunger, the endless fights, the smell of rot and rum and regret. So you told Nora you were leaving. Not forever, but long enough to make something that lasts longer than fear. She didn't cry. She only nodded, as if she had known all along that the city would never be big enough to hold the both of you. Go, she said, before it swallows you. Now, the sun is crawling up over the East River, a molten line of gold cutting through the haze. The ships creak at their moorings, and sailors shout to one another in a dozen languages. You feel the pulse of the place, the rhythm of departure, the steady heartbeat of movement. And for once it feels like life, not escape. You've sold what little you owned: your father's old coat, a pair of boots, a silver brooch that once belonged to your mother. It was enough for steerage passage south, maybe to New Orleans, maybe farther if you can find work along the way. Nora presses something into your hand. It's a small wooden cross, carved crudely from a scrap of driftwood. I made it, she says, looking away, just so you've got a piece of home. You want to tell her that home isn't a place. It's this: the weight of her hand, the sound of her voice, the memory of the two of you surviving in the dark together. But your throat is tight, and the words don't come. Instead, you pull her into an embrace, brief, fierce, wordless. Then you shoulder your small sack and step toward the gangplank. A sailor with a scar across his nose grunts, checks your ticket, waves you on. The boards creak under your boots. You pause halfway up and look back. The 5 Points lies beyond the fog, hidden but never far. You can almost see it: the crumbling brick walls, the crooked tenements, the glimmer of lamplight in the alleys. You think of the people you've left behind: Mick with his broken smile, the boys who never made it out, the city itself, still breathing, still dangerous. The ship's whistle screams, long and low, cutting through the morning. The rope lines fall. The dock shifts away beneath you. And then, at last, you are moving. The city begins to shrink, folding in on itself, its steeples and smokestacks fading into the mist, its noise replaced by the rhythm of waves slapping the hull. You grip the railing, breath trembling in your chest, caught between grief and relief. You think of your mother's face, her lullabies sung in an Irish tongue you barely remember. You think of your father, hunched and tired, staring out across the docks at the same horizon you now face. You wonder if he, too, once dreamed of leaving and simply never did. A gull cries overhead, tracing a white arc through the morning light. The ocean ahead is wide, indifferent, beautiful, a mirror of all the things you've been too poor to hope for. You whisper a quiet promise to it, that you will come back one day. Not as a boy from the gutters, not as another ghost of the 5 Points, but as someone who made it beyond the alleys, beyond the blood and hunger, beyond the endless fight to simply breathe. The wind catches your words and carries them east, toward the receding city. You watch until the skyline dissolves completely, until only the horizon remains, a clean, open line between everything you've survived and everything still waiting for you. And there, on the edge of that impossible future, you allow yourself the first real smile in years, not of victory, not of escape, but of possibility. The years drift by like tides. At first, you count them: the seasons, the ports, the wages earned, the letters you meant to write but never did. Then, time softens into a rhythm too gentle to name. You measure it instead by the smell of new soil, by the call of gulls above quieter shores, by the way your hands have grown calloused not from fighting, but from building. It's evening now. Somewhere far from 5 Points, the air smells of pine and river mud. You sit near a small fire, its light folding across your face like the touch of something kind. The logs crackle softly, and the stars blink open above you, one by one, deliberate as breaths. You take the small wooden cross from your coat pocket, the one Nora carved all those years ago. The edges have smoothed with time. You run your thumb over it, feeling the grooves where her knife once slipped. You think of her laughter, the sound of her bare feet on the cold stone floor, the way she looked at you that last morning, not with fear, but faith. You still dream of the 5 Points, sometimes. The wet cobbles underfoot, the faint hum of street fiddles, the scent of rain mixed with rot. In those dreams it is neither curse nor memory, it's simply part of you. The soil your roots pushed through to find light. They say the old brewery's gone now, torn down years ago. The city built new streets where the alleys once twisted, and gas lamps stand where shadows used to rule. But in some corners, the ghosts linger, in the creak of a dockboard, in the whistle of wind between narrow walls. You like to think they're watching over the living. The world feels quieter than it used to. Not because it is, but because you've finally learned how to listen. The sounds are all small now: the crack of a branch, the hush of your own breathing, the rustle of the night as it settles in around you. You close your eyes and see the river again, that morning you left, the fog curling over the East River, Nora's hand slipping away, the city shrinking into a blur of smoke and sorrow. You had no way of knowing that leaving was a kind of staying, that every road would eventually bend back toward where you began, not in distance, but in understanding. There's no grand ending waiting for you. No gold, no glory, no story told in the papers. Just this, the warmth of firelight on your face, the rhythm of your heartbeat syncing with the earth, the slow unwinding of years into peace. You think about all the boys who never got this far. The ones who vanished into the streets, or the drink, or the river. You speak their names sometimes when the night is deep enough, a roll call for the forgotten. And in that whisper, you promise that they are not lost, not entirely. A breeze moves through the trees, gentle as the breath of someone you once loved. The fire sighs and leans low. You stretch out your hands to it one last time, palms open, as if to catch a little of its light before sleep. For a moment, you hear the city again, faint and far away. Horses on cobbles, laughter spilling from taverns, the rattle of carriages, the clang of a bell. Then it fades, replaced by the hush of the forest and the heartbeat of the world. You settle back onto the earth, the wooden cross resting against your chest. The stars above you shimmer like distant windows, and as your eyes close, you feel the same warmth that once came from a tenement fire in a cold New York night. The kind of warmth that says you've done enough, fought enough, lived enough. The wind sighs through the branches, tender and endless. You let it take you, you made it, and now you rest.